Hi, and welcome to the Story of Cooking. I'm Sarah Nicholas. Hi, and welcome to the Story of Cooking. I'm Sarah Nicholas. This show explores people and their story of cooking. It will be a historical journey as well as a culinary experience. Each week we're going to take on a different story of cooking and how you can create that in your own home. You don't have to be a 4-star chef, but have a love for cooking and an interest in history, and you can create these meals in your own home. This week we're going to be looking at the Outer Banks of North Carolina. We're going to be doing 3 traditional North Carolina dishes: North Carolina barbecue, North Carolina hush puppies, and last we're going to make a crab avocado salsa. So the first thing we're going to work on is our barbecue. North Carolina style barbecue is different than other styles of barbecue. It actually has a vinegar-based sauce, so it's not as sweet as you would find in some other areas of the country. Barbecue is really regional as well. So the first thing we're going to do, it's already been started for me, we're going to take our pork out that's been cooking for 8 hours to overnight in a slow cooker, so it just kind of falls off. This is pork butt, which I would recommend only using pork butt because I think it's the best. So I'm just going to finish shredding this up. I like mine a little chunky. I don't like stringy barbecue. The Outer Banks is a second home to me. I've been going there ever since I was a little girl. Every summer would include a vacation to the beach, and the Outer Banks was our favorite place to go. Specifically, we go to Duck, North Carolina. The Outer Banks is actually a series of islands, and Duck is part of that, but it's all considered the Outer Banks. So my mom, it's some of my earliest memories. My mom would, when we were really little, load the car up at an ungodly hour when we were still sleeping and carry us out to the car like 2 o'clock in the morning. So by the time we woke up, we would be close enough to the beach because otherwise we were too annoying to handle in the car, me and my twin sister. So into the sauce, we're going to add 2 cups of vinegar. Remember I said North Carolina style barbecue is not that sweet? Vinegar makes it not that sweet. But it's one of my favorite styles of barbecue. Okay, 2 cups of white vinegar, 1 cup of melted butter. So we always got really excited when we got near the beach, so she would hope that we would stay asleep. As soon as we stopped at the first rest stop, usually she tried to at least make it to North Carolina, I'd see the sand on the pavement and it would get me so excited because I knew we were kind of close, and then you'd see the Welcome to North Carolina sign and then you were almost there. So I just put in red pepper flakes, that was 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons of salt, 1 tablespoon of hot sauce, 2 tablespoons of sugar, a little sweetness, 1 tablespoon of pepper, and 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. And that's all your sauce is. It looks a little runny now. We're gonna pop the pork back into the oven for about 30 minutes with the sauce on it, and it should cook the sauce down a little bit. You can also just make this sauce on the side and then just put it on your sandwich or however you need the pork. You don't have to cook it with the pork, but I like it kind of seeps into the meat. So that's why I put it back in the oven. So it wasn't just me and my sister and my mom that went to the beach. It was actually a huge family event every year. We'd rent this house that slept at least 10, and we'd have all the cousins go down to the beach together, and we would basically literally wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning and not come in from the beach until it got dark. Our muscles would be all atrophied from trying to fight the waves all day long. Okay, so we're putting the pork in the casserole dish. It's gonna go back in the oven, and I'm just gonna pour most of my sauce, if not all of my sauce. We'll save a little bit at the top. over it. So we're gonna pop the pork barbecue that's already been shredded and coated with the sauce back in the oven for about half an hour at 350, just so all the juices can get incorporated into the meat. I'm gonna clean up this area, and when I get back, we will start on our North Carolina hush puppies. Hi, and welcome back. We have everything set up to make our North Carolina style hush puppies. We're gonna start first with our dry ingredients. And into hush puppies, we're going to add 2 cups of cornmeal, 1 cup of flour. So the Outer Banks of North Carolina doesn't only have a lot of good food, they have a lot of good history as well. You may have seen this on a North Carolina license plate. It'll say first in flight. That's because the first flight took place in North Carolina. The Wright brothers in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, which is part of the Outer Banks. So it's a pretty cool historical fact. North Carolina is actually a series of islands called the Barrier Islands. It runs 200 miles from the coast of Virginia along the coast of North Carolina. So it's long and it's got a lot of towns. It's actually, the parts of North Carolina are named after its original inhabitants, which were the Manio, Kinnickinnic, Ocracoke, Chickamackonic, and Hatteras Indians. I was worried about getting all those names right. So you will see those names scattered throughout the islands, different names of the town, because the Native Americans were the original inhabitants. Sorry, I did not mention that I added salt, and then I also added some baking powder. Now I'm going to add sugar, 2 tablespoons of sugar. North Carolina style hush puppies are a little sweeter, so the sugar is very important. And then I'm going to add some diced onion. Those are my dry ingredients. Give those a stir. Okay, so those are all my dry ingredients. Now I'm just going to add my 2 wet ingredients. We have a cup of buttermilk. And we have a tablespoon of hot sauce. A little heat. Should be good with our barbecue. All right, mix all of that together. Now, if you go to any North Carolina restaurant, instead of bread baskets that you get before meals, you probably are going to get hush puppies. Hush puppies or sweet potato biscuits. That's what they always serve down there in the Outer Banks. I like the hush puppies. All right, I'm gonna get in here with my hands because it's easier. In the 16 and 1700s, pirates actually started to appear in the Outer Banks. They used it as their base of operations, and they would intercept British and Spanish ships that were carrying gold and silver. And I know all of you have probably heard of the famous pirate Blackbeard. He was one of the pirates that used the Outer Banks as his base of operations. So he's a very popular character down there. In fact, if you go anywhere on the Outer Banks and you see a putt-putt course, because they're all over the Outer Banks for some reason, the Outer Banks and putt-putt, they're all Blackbeard themed and pirate themed. So one of my favorite things that we did in the Outer Banks, I think I was about, I don't know, 10, 11 years old, and I have 6 cousins and we're all about the same age, and my granddaddy decided that we all needed to go on a deep sea fishing boat. Very pirate-like. And we were not on the boat for more than an hour before all of us got sick all over the place. It was the worst experience ever because everyone got sick, but it was also one of the best memories I have because my granddad would always brag about how in the war he had such a tough stomach and nothing could take him down, and he was the first one to get sick on the trip. And we didn't catch anything at all. So it was a rough ride, but it's a good memory now. So what I'm doing is I'm making my little hush puppies, just using my hands. You can make them as big as or little as you want. A lot of times in North Carolina, they'll come out in the shape of hot dogs, like this, which you can do as well. I like the little balls because they're prettier. Okay, so we have our oil that's been heating up, and we're gonna drop those in It shouldn't take too long. There's no egg in this either, so it doesn't take too long to cook. One of our favorite things to do also is to go out to Ocracoke Island. It's an island off the islands of the Outer Banks, and you can only get there by ferry, and no cars or anything are allowed on the island. They have some really good restaurants, and they actually have a population that lives there all year round as well. But it's fun to go out there, and they have a place that has really good conch soup. I love conch soup. Those look good. They take no time at all, as you can see. My oil might be a little hot because they're cooking a little faster than I probably would have expected them to. We'll just do a few more. This is vegetable oil. So don't use flavored oil. You don't want your hush puppies to taste like olive oil or avocado oil, grapeseed oil. Use a neutral oil. That's better. My heat was a little too high. You run the risk, if it's too high, of getting the outside of your hush puppies too cooked and the inside not cooked enough, so just be careful. Looks like they're working pretty good though. So you can eat these at the beginning of a meal. Like I said, they're served a lot in North Carolina as like the starter, like you would get a bread basket in an Italian restaurant. Or you can have them as like a party appetizer. They're great with seafood. Probably, obviously, because they're found in the Outer Banks. They like a lot of fried seafood and hush puppies. Okay, we'll do a few more of those. So I was saying that the pirates kind of used the Outer Banks as their base of operations in the 1700s. In the 18 and 1900s, it was actually known for hunting. A lot of hunters would come to the Outer Banks and hunt goose and duck. Alright, I'll just do one more to get a really pretty one since I kind of cooked some of those a little too much. And then I'll be done. So another really popular thing on the Outer Banks now is all-you-can-eat seafood buffets. They always have hush puppies and all-you-can-eat crab legs. That was also a lot of fun when you were a kid. I would make my mom, you know, crack the crab legs for me, but I could literally sit there for hours and just eat crab. So I have to do that every time I go to the Outer Banks. It's essential. Don't make my mom crack my crab legs anymore, but everything else is the same. So I'm going to finish the rest of these up. I have a few more. I'm going to clean the area, and when we come back, we will make our crab and avocado salsa. Hi, and we're back, and we're going to start our crab, corn, and avocado salsa. This is really, really good with fresh ingredients. And when you're going down to the Outer Banks, like I said, you go through Virginia, down the East Coast to the Outer Banks, North Carolina, and there's one road that runs the whole way down from Virginia, once you reach the East Coast of Virginia, all the way to the Outer Banks. Once you enter North Carolina and you start getting close to the Outer Banks, you start seeing fresh vegetable and farmers markets everywhere, just lining the road. And our tradition always is to stop at least a few of them to find the freshest fruits and vegetables that we need for the week, because once you get down to the Outer Banks, they have supermarkets and that kind of thing, but they don't have the fresh farmers markets like they do on the road to the Outer Banks. So once you cross that bridge, you want to have all your fruit and you want to have all your vegetables for the whole week, and ideally you want to have all the food you need except for your fresh seafood, because you don't want to leave the beach except to walk to the local seafood market down the street. So this crab and corn avocado salsa is one of my family favorites. We spend a lot of time again on the beach, and after a hot day, you would come inside, you would grab your cocktail and an appetizer to eat, and we would always sit out on the deck and watch the ocean and enjoy our cocktails, and not when I was a kid, of course, but now enjoy our cocktails and eat our salsa or whatever else we had made that day. But this is always a favorite because it's so good. All right, so our first ingredient, obviously, is the crab. Now, crab and my family go way back. Another one of my favorite memories of the Outer Banks is when I was, I guess, well, it might have been earlier than that, but my memory that I can remember, I was about 7 years old when we started doing this. Me, my cousins, and my twin sister and I would all go down to the beach, and we would chase these crabs with our flashlights, and we would bring a bucket, obviously, and a net. So we would track them down, scoop them up in the net, and throw them in the bucket. And if they were big enough for us to keep, we would take them back to the house and make them and eat them and clean them, which is also not fun. And those were the blue claw crabs. And there's 2 ways you can eat blue crabs. The first is the way we caught them. You bring them, back in, boil them, eat them, perfect. And the other way to eat a blue crab is a soft shell crab, which is just the blue crab that has been malting, and the shell becomes soft and edible. And that's really, really popular in North Carolina, especially on sandwiches. My mom's all-time favorite, is to make a soft shell crab sandwich, and it's done pretty much the same way that you would do fried chicken. You would bread it and fry it and eat it. It's really delicious. It seems kind of weird, but it's really good, trust me. So crab and I go way back. It's one of my favorite things. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of all-you-can-eat crab places, and I love going to those because you can just eat crab legs until you can't even breathe, which is awesome. Okay, so into the crab, we are going to add our corn. This is fresh corn, and I guess you could cook it, but I actually just like to eat it fresh, non-cooked, off the ear. It's really, really sweet that way, especially if you buy it at a farmer's market on a roadside stand on your way down to the beach. So other foods that we would have eaten out on our deck after a long day on the beach would have been steamer pots. There's a lot of steamer pot restaurants on the Outer Banks where you can get any kind of seafood you want in a pot, and they throw like a couple potatoes and ears of corn in there, but nobody really cares about that. They just want all the seafood that they throw in there. So we would definitely eat those, and we would definitely always be drinking Bloody Marys, which are very popular in the Outer Banks, and I think a lot of other places in America. Okay, so we had corn. That was 2 ears of corn. Now we are adding red onion. Okay. And the next thing we're gonna add is our lime juice. Freshly squeezed is always better. One of the things I wanted to mention earlier, and I forgot, I said that the Outer Banks is full of a lot of firsts. Also, the first English-born person in the United States was in the Outer Banks, and her name was Virginia Dare, and the Outer Banks can be found in Dare County. So that's actually pretty interesting. The first baby born in America, Virginia Dare. Okay. Other really popular things to eat in North Carolina, particularly in the Outer Banks, other than soft-shell crabs, the ones from Collington Island are actually the best, are fried oysters. We like everything fried in the South. There's a lot of tuna boats that come in at the end of the day, and they just throw the tuna out, and you can take it and clean it and eat it, and it's fresh and it's delicious. The next thing that goes in are the avocado. They've already been peeled and pitted for me, but I'm just gonna dice them up. I like them chunky. I like to see my avocado. Don't do this too far in advance and just leave them sitting, because they will turn brown. But once they hit the citrus that's in the salsa, that will help them stay green. So, all right. You can cut them as chunky as you like. I just love avocado chunky. So we have 2 avocados, and try to get them ripe, but not too ripe, because you don't want to make guacamole. You don't want mushy avocados. All right, one more. Kind of messy. So I go to the Outer Banks actually any time of year. I keep talking about summer, but one of my favorite times to go is actually in the fall, because all the tourists have kind of gone away. It sounds bad, but it's so peaceful down there. You can sit and look at the beach, and it's still warm because you're still in the South. We've actually even gone there at Christmas time, which is also fun. And all the restaurants seem to be, when it's out of season, out of tourist season, all the restaurants seem to be like testing their recipes for the next summer. So you get some really, really interesting things to enjoy. Okay, so that was 2 avocados. Now I'm going to add a splash of hot sauce. I think I've had hot sauce in everything today. They like their hot sauce in the Outer Banks, or at least my family does. And then lime zest. Zest of 1 lime. Okay. Another interesting fact about Blackbeard, I talked about Blackbeard earlier, and how the island's named after its inhabitants, which are mostly Native American. There's one, original inhabitants, excuse me, they're not Native American down there any longer, but one of the non-Native American names of one of the towns down there is called Kill Devil Hills, and that's actually kind of a funny story. There's actually a few theories about how Kill Devil Hills got its name, but the one I like the most actually has to do with Blackbeard. And apparently, allegedly, he was camped out in the dunes waiting for a ship to come to shore to raid, I guess that's what pirates do. And they were drinking moonshine, and they referred to the moonshine as strong enough to kill the devil. So, the town is now called Kill Devil Hills. That's one theory. I like that theory. Okay, so I like mint because I think it freshens it up. So I'm just going to chop up some mint to go into my salsa. That on top. You can even chop up a little more and save it to garnish it later if you want, but this is how I like it. Alright, so there you have it. We have our crab, corn, and avocado salsa. I like it best simply served just with tortilla chips. Dip the tortilla chip in there and get a big spoonful of the crab. My sister likes it on the inside of a quesadilla. You could serve it as a topper for fish, seafood. You can make it into a crab cake if you wanted to. You could even top a burger with it. It's a very versatile thing. So it's delicious and definitely a good deck food, especially with for the people that don't like alcohol, a glass of sweet tea, or a Bloody Mary is my favorite. Alright, so this is done. I'm going to clean up the area, and when we come back, we'll have all 3 dishes plated. Okay, we're back, and we have everything ready to go for our Outer Banks meal. We have our crab and avocado salsa, which I said there's many ways you can eat that. My favorite is with tortilla chips. We have our hush puppies. Those are best served when they're hot, straight out of the fryer. And one of my favorite things to do is break them in half and dip them in honey butter. They're so good that way. And lastly, we have our pork that has come out of the oven. It's been soaking up the juices for about half an hour. And you can see it's looking pretty good. Got all of those red pepper flakes on there and all that vinegar. It's going to be delicious. A lot of people's favorite way to eat the pork is on a sandwich. You don't have to eat it on a sandwich. You can eat it however you want. I just eat it like that on a plate. Drizzle it with some more sauce. I love vinegar sauce. But you can eat it on bread. You can put it on a roll, a baguette, whatever you want to do. One of my mom's recipes is actually to make it into a hash with some potatoes, and I really like it that way. I think that's delicious too. Not something you do in North Carolina. I guess it's a Virginia thing, but it's so good. So there you have it, guys. Your Outer Banks meal. Thank you for joining me on this chapter of the story of cooking. I'm Sarah Nicholas. I'll see you next time.